Russia and North Korea have signed a new treaty that both leaders said was a breakthrough document that takes their relations to new levels. The agreement, agreed upon by Russian President Vladimir Putin and North Korean leader Kim Jong Un, is aimed at expanding the economic and military cooperation of both countries and cement a united front against Washington. In a belligerent assertion against the West, Putin said the strategic partnership commits both countries to a mutual defense clause or clause under which both countries will help each other in repelling external aggression if either of them is attacked. He added that under the treaty, Russia will not rule out military technical cooperation with the DPRK, while calling for a review of what Russia holds the restrictive regime inspired by the US and its allies at the United Nations Security Council towards the DPRK. Further, Putin claimed that Russia and Korea have an independent foreign policy and do not tolerate the language of blackmail and dictating. Putin also made it a point to thank Pyongyang for its support of Moscow's war in Ukraine. On his part, Kim Jong Un called the treaty defensive, and he praised Putin as North Korea's dearest friend. The North Korean leader said relations between North Korea and Russia have risen to a new high level of alliance. Kim said the pact will expand cooperation in the areas of politics, economy, and defense, calling it strictly peace-loving and defensive in nature. Putin drew attention to statements by the United States and other NATO countries which have agreed to let Ukraine strike targets inside Russia with Western-supplied weapons. Kim Jong Un said that North Korea intends to further improve its strategic cooperation with Russia. He added that Pyongyang will also unconditionally support all of Russia's policies. Earlier this year, Russia provided a major reprieve for Pyongyang by using its veto power at the United Nations to effectively end official United Nations monitoring of sanctions on North Korea. Putin arrived at Pyongyang's airport early on Wednesday, making his first trip to the North Korean capital in 24 years. After Kim welcomed Putin with an embrace, North Korean state media said the two shared pent-up inmost thoughts on the ride to the state guest house. Putin also invited Kim, who toured the Russian Far East, on a rare trip abroad in September last year, to Moscow.
블라디미르 푸틴 동지와 감격적인 상봉을 하셨습니다. 조로 최고 순위분들.
Heino Klink is the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia. He's joining us from Washington, D.C. Mr. Klink, welcome to the show. First of all, what do you make of this camaraderie between Putin and Kim and their agreement, which is meant to enhance both military cooperation and, quote, cement a united front against Washington?
Well, thank you very much for having me today. I think Putin's visit to Pyongyang underscores the fact that Putin and Kim Jong Un are pariahs in arms, if you will. Both represent countries that are increasingly isolated in the global community. The implications of this new defense arrangement have dangerous impacts both regionally and globally. Regionally, I would say, based on the fact that now the U.S.-South Korean alliance needs to take into consideration what the Russians would do if the North Koreans were to attack South Korea. Globally, and particularly in Europe, we have already seen the impact that North Korean munitions have had on the Russian war effort against Ukraine. So this new arrangement, I think, just foreshadows increased danger and instability globally.
Mr. Klink, what will eventually come out of this historic meeting? We've seen the embrace between Putin and we've seen the embrace between Putin and Kim Jong Un. What significance will it have on the world order? We are talking about two nuclear nations having agreements, signing agreements amidst a war.
Well, I don't think we can underestimate the dangerous precedent here. You know, you recall in the era after 9/11, there was talk of this axis of evil. Now I think there's more and more talk of this arc of authoritarianism, not just Moscow and Pyongyang, but also Tehran and Beijing as well. I think what's dangerous here in particular is the fact that Russia finds itself in all of its bilateral relations with these other authoritarian states as the junior partner, a country that is now dependent on the likes of places like Tehran and Pyongyang for military support. Those countries are going to want something in return. And the reality is that what Russia has to offer these other pariah states is advanced military technology, and that will have dangerous ramifications.
Mr. Klink, Putin says that Russia and North Korea have an independent foreign policy and do not tolerate the language of blackmail and dictating. I'm so sure he was talking to the West and especially the US. What do you think will be Washington's response to his visit to North Korea and this statement?
Well, first of all, I would say that it's somewhat ironic in light of Putin's recent remarks as to preconditions for peace with Ukraine. So, I mean, again, he in that public statement last week dictated his preconditions for a peace agreement from Ukraine. And it was very, very one-sided, very, very one-way. I think the United States, in conjunction with its partners and allies, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but more and more also, I would say, in Europe, will have to come up with mitigating strategies to ensure, again, that this arc of authoritarianism is kept in check. Because, again, we can no longer limit ourselves to solitary, unitary actions in one part of the world, because we, I think, have seen growing coordination and collaboration between these countries, and we need to be able to ensure that we can respond effectively.
I've been talking to Mr. Heino Klink. He's the former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia. Mr. Klink is in Washington, D.C. Mr. Klink, thank you for talking to WION World is One today.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.